Right, so I'm looking at the weekly chart, right? I'm looking at the pandemic low to pandemic high. Each candlestick is 1 week worth of data. And we're sitting right at the 62% retracement, 380 level, right? Very important level for the market. We've been at this level. We did break through this level multiple times, but nonetheless, bulls and bears have been fighting for this level for the past 5 weeks. So next week will be an important week, right? We have CPI data, core CPI and CPI data on Thursday. And then Friday, we have consumer sentiment and earnings from JP Morgan and major banks and TSM semiconductors. So very important week. Will probably, end of next week or the following week, market is going to finally break out of this range, right? It's been trading for 5 weeks at the same time, right? So I'm going to show it to my son David. He wants to see it, right? So each candlestick is 1 week worth of data, and the price is flat, right? It's staying at the same level. So there are only 2 possible ways the market can go, right? If let's say CPI data is better than expected, right? Which based on Eurozone, you can assume, the inflation in Europe is different than inflation in the United States. Europe, main driving forces are energy crisis, right? It's the gas, it's the oil. In the United States, these pressures have already subsided, and mostly it's the wages and rent prices and housing prices are still inflationary pressure. But assuming that they are going in the same direction and CPI is subsiding, one scenario is that we basically retesting the highs, right? And then the question becomes, let me just clear this, right? The question becomes, will we hold this 52-week low? Right, because then we have Fed in February speak, right, and give us a guidance in terms of, at what point they will pivot. Based on the meeting notes from yesterday or day before yesterday, every Fed committee member voted not to lower interest rate this year, right? So if that's the case and prolong restricted interest rate environment, then the market can drop, right? And then the question, you have 3 scenarios, right? One, we do not break the 52-week low, right? And that's kind of the idea of soft landing. Potentially actually reach 420, 415, revisit these levels, right? Let's talk about first 6 months, right? So let's talk about H1, right? So first half of the year. We're going into June, July. So we ended somewhere here, right? That's one scenario, right? Scenario number 1. Scenario number 2, CPI data is better than expected or worse than expected, and Fed basically stays the course and raises interest rates 50 basis points in February, maybe 25 basis points in March, and so on and so forth, and still being extremely hawkish, right? And then the market will break the 52-week low. So first, let's talk about scenario 1. How many of you think that we will have scenario number 1? Basically, that the 52-week low will hold, right? And even today, there are analysts from JP Morgan came out, from BlackRock Group, and basically said, you know what? We are either, this is the bottom, right? This is the bottom, right? This is the bottom. And marginally maybe we'll break it, but for the most part, this is the bottom for this year, and we are heading higher eventually. Eventually we're heading higher, right? So that's scenario 1, and this is called soft landing, right? People who believed, analysts or money managers in JP Morgan, people who have a lot of resources and analyst team, they believe that this will be a soft landing, right? That yes, services PMI is lower. Yes, wages are contracting or slowing down the increase of the wage pressures, but unemployment is still low. People are still flying. People are still traveling, and gas prices are back to pre-pandemic level. The ticket prices for airlines are back to pre-pandemic level. So soft landing. Right, so how many of you think scenario 1 is going to occur in the first 6 months, that the 52-week low will hold, right? By June, July, 52-week will still hold and going forward. And then we are heading, first half it's 420 and maybe second half as high as probably 440 and 460.